Kalonda Henry decided to start her private practice last year during a global pandemic. She decided to let her imposter syndrome go and follow through with her dream of being a business owner. And guess what? Not only did she start her private practice, where she serves clients through early intervention, school contracts, and private pay, but she even caught the attention of the local news, which led to some pretty incredible things. But I'll let her tell you that story. If you've been wanting to start a private practice now, but worry about the timing, this episode will show you what is possible. Stay tuned. I'm Jenna Castro-Casbon, speech-language pathologist, business coach, and creator of the Start Your Private Practice system. And I'm on a mission to turn stuck SLPs into successful private practitioners. If you're tired of dealing with high productivity requirements, high caseload sizes, and low pay, it's time to take control of your professional, personal, and financial life and finally get the freedom, flexibility, and financial abundance that you deserve by working with private clients in your own practice. Join me here each week as I share tips, best practices, and inspirational interviews on the Private Practice Success Stories podcast. If you're a private practitioner or one in the making, you're in the right place, so let's get started. Hello, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Private Practice Success Stories podcast. Today's guest, Kalonda Henry, is truly a breath of fresh air. She's young, energetic, driven, and hasn't let anything or anyone stop her from pursuing her dreams. There are a lot of SLPs out there who want to have private practices because they feel stuck, dissatisfied, or burned out in their jobs at schools, hospitals, early interventions, and even other people's private practices. Maybe you fit this description. This is what I call the stuck SLP. The SLP who wants to give her clients more than the administration will allow her. The SLP who wants to spend more time with her family, or honestly, with herself, having more work-life balance. The SLP who has student loan debt that she wants to pay off, or life events that she wants to save for, and she doesn't know how she'll ever do it on her current salary. This is why I want to help people move away from being stuck SLPs and become successful private practitioners. The successful private practitioner sets her own hours. She chooses what kind of client she wants to work with. She sets her fees and her rates and isn't sitting around hoping and wishing for a raise. If she wants to earn more money, she gets more clients. And if she can't see them all, she hires people to see them for her. The successful private practitioner isn't stuck. She's going places that she wants to go in her career and her life because she's taken back control of her professional, personal, and financial life. And you can be her too. This is exactly what I teach people how to do in the Start Your Private Practice program. How to shift from being stuck SLPs to successful private practitioners. And we're going to be opening the doors for our big spring enrollment very soon. So if you're ready to transform your life and finally get that freedom, flexibility, and financial abundance that you deserve, make sure that you are on the wait list over at startyourprivatepractice.com/waitlist, and you will be notified as soon as we reopen. Some people have been waiting to start their private practices for a long time, staying stuck, waiting for the quote-unquote right time. But as soon as you hear from Kalonda, you will realize that there is no such thing as a right time. You have to decide to start your private practice, decide to get unstuck, and start moving forward toward the life that you have always imagined for yourself. Kalonda has started and grown her private practice at a time when others have been stuck waiting and waiting for another time. But while you were waiting, she decided to go out there and get it. And if she was able to accomplish all of this in 2020, imagine what she'll be able to do this year and beyond. So let me introduce you to successful private practitioner, Kalonda Henry. So before we dive in, can you please share your name, your location, and the name of your private practice?
Yes, my name is Kalonda Henry, and the name of my private practice is Broad Horizon Speech Therapy, and I am located in Jacksonville, Florida.
So we have been trying to do this interview for a while. We've been, we've known about each other for a long time, and I have watched your growth like over the last like 6 months to a year over, Instagram just go crazy. So I can't wait to tell people what like this growth has meant to you. But before we get to that part, can you take us back to the beginning of your career as an SLP?
Yes, absolutely. So I started out my path as a bachelor's level clinician because in the state of Florida, with your undergraduate degree, you can work for 2 years as a bachelor's level clinician, ideally. And then if you get into graduate school, you can continue your path and work on a teaching certificate. So that's kind of how I started. After I finished my undergraduate, I got right in and I said, okay, I'm ready to start. And it was so funny because when I met with the supervisor, she was like, you are so personable. I feel like you're going to do great. Here's what I want you to do. I have another clinician who's in a similar spot as you. I want you to go out to her school, visit with her, and then you're going to call me back tomorrow and tell me if you can do the job. So immediately I'm like, yay. But then I'm kind of terrified because what did I just sign myself up for? So I remember going out to the school, meeting with her, and I was like, oh, yes, I love this. I can totally do this. So I started working, and then maybe a year into that, I applied to graduate school, and my graduate program where I attended, which is Nova Southeastern University, they happened to be there at like the career fair for the county that I was working for. So they were advertising the program, and I was like, wow, I can stay here and go to school. This is great. Like I thought I would have to move and, kind of pick up and do all of these things. So I ended up, pursuing my master's degree. And then I graduated and decided that I kind of wanted to take my clinical fellowship in a different route. And that was my first introduction into working in private practice directly. I had kind of, interned and did some practicum hours. And this was a place that I had previously interned with. And now I was a clinical fellow there. So that's kind of how I got into the whole private practice world. And then during my clinical fellowship, I just started to really look out on Facebook, and then I stumbled upon your group. And I started to learn more, and I was like, man, I really want to learn from other clinicians and really find out how private practice works. And, kind of one of those things of an undergrad when they go around and they're like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I was kind of always like, oh, I want to start a private practice. But it was kind of like one of those things that I said, but I knew I had not a clue of how I was going to get there. I just knew that sounded like it would be a great idea for me.
Well, I love that, right? I love that you had that idea in the back of your mind, right? So it sounds like you always saw yourself owning a business.
Yes, I did have that, somewhere in the back of my brain, deep in a reservoir, and I just had to activate it again because, of course, like the biggest thing was fear. And I remember when I joined your group and you talked about the whole, analysis, paralysis, and you kind of explained it and it just stuck. And I was like, oh, that's me. Like, I feel like she's talking to me. I have sat here and kind of figured out every reason why I can't do this, all of the things. And then I watched your video and I was like, is she like really talking to me? Because it sounds like she's talking directly to me by saying, hey, you've thought about this, you wanted to do it, you think you don't have enough experience. And I was like, yeah, that's me. Like, oh, stuff is me.
Well, that's so important, right? It's important to see yourself like, and I, to be honest, I do that on purpose, right? Like I'm a speech therapist too. I had a very similar situation where I got started seeing private clients earlier in my career than I think a lot of other people, think is possible. So when I'm talking to my audience, I'm really also like sharing my own story, right? Because I remember what that was like. And I'm the kind of person, I'm an Enneagram 9 for anyone who likes Enneagram stuff, but like I like people to feel comfortable. And I don't like to, make people feel, I don't know, like uncomfortable or feel like stressed out in any way. So that's one of the reasons why I like to help people get out of analysis paralysis and get moving forward. So there you are, you've had a year under your belt, like doing like in the schools, right? As like the bachelor level SLP, go to grad school, CF in a private practice. And now you are getting the benefit of seeing how that practice is run, but you're also kind of starting to explore how you might do your own private practice one day. Is that right?
Yes, yes. And so that was the great thing too, because coming in, by the time I reached, the end of my program and starting at the private practice, my clinical fellowship was a bit different because I, at that point, was already like 4 years in. I had, been in the schools for 4 years. I had worked with a specialized population. So I was coming to the table as a clinical fellow, but my supervisor was like, I feel like you can totally do this because you've been doing it for so long. But still, I still wanted more to learn. And that was one of the reasons that pushed me because I felt like, I knew a lot about working in the schools, but I really wanted to expand, like that whole lifelong learning. I was like, there's more for me to learn. I need to be able to learn more. And after talking with some of the individuals that I worked with at school, they were like, you need to go. Like, you got to spread your wings, take this placement. And that's what I did. I took it as like a leap of faith. And then there I was working in private practice. And I did that and I worked with that company for about 3 years. And then I had my son. And so once I had my son, I kind of felt like, okay, it was so fast paced with working and, figuring out how to be a mom. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should go back into the schools because there I was again, I need to go back to my comfort area because this is hard. So let me get back to what I'm comfortable at. And so I ended up back in the schools and I started in a new district. And then I ended up leaving that district like midway because there were just some things that didn't work out. So I went back to my previous district, but then as a contractor. So I was working as a contractor. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, here I was thinking that I was going to go back on this easy path, working, being a mom. Because, yeah, right. Nothing about motherhood is easy. So I thought that I could make at least one aspect of my life a little comfort. So I went back and started working in the schools under the contractor, but it was the district that I'd worked for. So I had the experience. I knew kind of how everything worked. And then fast forward, I'm still researching everything in your group. And then finally, I just said, I talked to my husband. I was like, that's it. I've watched Jenna's videos. I've purchased, the roadmaps. I've figured out how to set my price. I'm just going to do it. I'm ordering the form. And I remember reaching out to you and I was like, I need to purchase these forms because I'm like, this is it. I'm going to do it. And that was my first step. And then I just connected with so many people in the group. And then I just said, okay, I need to do this. And then fast forward, we go off on spring break. Had no idea there was going to be a global pandemic during spring break. And then we get the news that we're not going to be returning back to school. So I'm like, oh my goodness. At that time, I'm working in a specialized developmental delay preschool. Okay. So now my little 65 to 70 student caseload of little preschoolers and, K to second grade is all online. So I'm immediately, how am I going to do this? How am I going to see all these kids online. And it just became so stressful. And that was it. Like, once I got to that point and I was kind of, reaching out, and then I started to feel like I felt like I was really going to leave the world of speech pathology. I felt like this is it. Like, I can't do this. Maybe I should find another career. This is so overwhelming. And then that's what it was. I really had to sit back and evaluate, if I'm going to do this, now is the time, because I'm going to walk away from everything I've worked so hard for. And like, for me, I always felt like speech language pathology was like my passion. So me and working with kids and working with families and working with adults, like I always had like a heart to heart connection. Like I felt like every client I came in, I always tell all of my kids, like they were my kids before I became a mom. That's how I felt about them. So I just I had to step away, because I knew this can't be what this field is about, And then so when I started to read over the group, and then I started listening to your podcast and so many stories that like resonated with me, I was like, oh my gosh, these people are like, they were similar stories. And I started to feel like these are real people doing the same thing that I want to do. So why not now? Why not now? And so that's what it was. Literally, the summer came, I kind of put things up in the air, and I really started to getting my ducks in a row. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I had a goal that before school started back, I was going to do certain things and not return to my job. And I kind of told my husband, this is what I'm going to do. I know it sounds crazy, but I have this strange intuition that it's going to work out. I can't explain it right now, but I know it's going to work out. And I did. Like 2 weeks before the school year started, I put in my 2 weeks. I was like, I'm not going back, for my mental health. I'm not returning. And that was that.
And that was, listeners, that was during the pandemic, right? This was just this last summer, right? So
yes,
a lot of times, and I've heard this a ton online, right? SLP, our whole world, right? But definitely our profession was really just, flipped like on its head with really no warning, right? And all of these things that we didn't think could happen online, we somehow either did them online or were expected to do them online. And that created a lot of problems for people, right? Where people felt internally conflicted about, were these kids getting, or adults, if you work with adults, but, good care? Was I still being a good therapist? I mean, it really did, just like you expressed concern about maybe leaving the profession. I know a lot of people were in that, right? But rather than leave, you decided to create your own job, your own opportunity. So tell people a little bit more about how you like really got started and what your first, clients were like and that kind of thing.
So really, in talking with the group, I started to learn more about early intervention services. So I decided to reach out to my local early steps partnerhood and see how that process worked. And kind of, I had done everything on the state level. I started an LLC. I had liability insurance already because I had it from practicing. I had my certificate of clinical competence. Like I had everything I needed to start. So this was a way to kind of get my foot in the door. And after consulting with some other private practice owners in the group, that was a good starting point. And because I really like that population anyways, I decided to reach out to the coordinator. I sent her an email and said I was interested, and I didn't hear back for a few days. So I kind of got worried and thought like, oh my gosh, maybe she's not going to respond to me. What was interesting is, lo and behold, like before I had my son, I had actually interviewed for an internal position there, and they ended up hiring someone else that they said had a little bit more experience, which I was fine with that. And I was like, okay, then maybe this isn't for me. So I had a friend who worked there, and she reached out to the coordinator and she said, my friend, she just started a private practice. And I think she sent you an email with her contact. And so she got back to me after that, and I gave her my information with my business, and she said, okay, yeah, let's meet. So we met. This is prior to the pandemic. So that was kind of like what I was like, yeah, let me get the ball started and rolling. And we met, and she kind of explained the process to me. And I thought, like, oh, yeah, I can totally do this. And she kind of explained that a lot of the clinicians that were working, they kind of, had their little business on the side, and they would pick up clients here and there and kind of see them after their school workload or wherever they were working at during the day and kind of during their time off. So that's what I had started doing initially, just kind of doing that on the side. And then fast forward to like when the pandemic hit, and I had finally, caved and was like, okay, I'm ready to pick up more and really get the ball running. And then COVID happened. So it kind of put a halt on everything. And then from that point on, after things kind of went past a little while, and I started again thinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should. So right at the time when I finally made my mind, okay, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks, the coordinator reached back out to me and said, okay, Kalonda, I know that things have been crazy because of the pandemic, but we're ready to officially sign your contract. We can offer you full time. We have enough clients to give you full time if you want to do it. And I said, yeah, why not? And I totally agreed to it. And there I was signing a contract and still thinking like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I know how to be a therapist, but obviously this business aspect, I'm going to have to learn as I go. But yeah, I started there. I started picking up clients and then just still reaching out and exploring more about schools. And because I had worked in the private practice that I worked for had contracted out to charter schools and private schools. So I had been the clinician who was going in servicing those students. And so I kind of felt like, maybe I should inquire about a charter school. Again, don't have a clue at what I'm doing. I'm just going with the wind here because, I've decided I'm going to do this full time. And I am reading over in the group, and I got your forms about the contracts and I'm like, okay, yes, I think I can do this. I have to market myself. I know how to be a school clinician. I know how to do the paperwork. I can do all the things that they need me to do. So now they won't know about me unless I tell them about me. And that was kind of like the perspective. I started working with a marketing coach, and he would tell me all the time, he's like, no one knows about you unless you let people know about you. So all that organic connections and talking with people, he encouraged that. And so I ended up sending an email to a local charter school, reaching out to the principal saying, hey, I'm a speech language pathologist. I own Broad Horizon Speech Therapy. We provide school services and interested if you would be looking for an SLP to service your students for next school year. So for a while, I didn't hear back from him. And, I kind of had this plan already that I'm going to try this for so long. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go back and, rethink things over. So I didn't hear from the principal for a few weeks. And then literally like a week before school started, he sent me an email and he said, oh, yes, we would like, to contract your services. So then I'm like freaking out, like, oh my gosh. All right, this is it. Now to get and so they ended up interviewing me, him and the vice principal. And, they asked me all the questions, that normal questions that you would ask during your IEP competence level and all those things. And so everything went fine. And I had to gather contracts, get those things looked over and submit the contract. And that was scary. I thought like, I'm used to being the clinician that just shows up to the school, does the therapy. And now like seeing my name being on a contract and like with my business, it was just like, wow. And then at that point, when I got the contract, I remember reaching back out to you. And then that's when you told me about the group all about school contracting. And I was like, wow, great. Because I think this is the route of where I would like to go, because I knew I always loved the schools. Like that was just my passion. So I knew I needed to encompass that in my private practice somewhere. And that's kind of what happened. Like, and here I am now with the school contract. I'm still contracted with the Early Steps and Early Intervention program. So I have that. And then I have private clients as well. And I just recently got an office location because a lot of pediatricians were finding out about me, and I was interviewed on the news, the local news. So then it just blew my mind. Like literally all of this, I thought to myself, like, I just quit my job like a month ago. And here I am, when the news reporter reached out to me and called me, I thought, like, what? She's calling me to interview me on the news? Like, I'm just this regular SLP who just quit her job and decided to start a private practice.
You're not just a regular SLP, right? You were a go-getter, right? Y'all who are listening, keep in mind, she started her private practice in the middle of a pandemic, right? And, there were a couple of times where she sent emails and, could have gotten discouraged because people didn't get back to her right away. But like the stars would still align, and Kalanda's private practice with, private clients and school contracts and early intervention would take off in the middle of a global pandemic, right? There are some people who are like, oh no, not now. Like now would be not a good time to start a private practice. And then there's other people who realize the tremendous opportunities right now because there's people going without services. And if you are able and willing to provide them, pediatricians need people to refer people to. EIs have wait lists of people who aren't being seen. So now is a great time to start a private practice. And Kalanda is like a wonderful example of this. I love it. Okay. So let me ask you, I have one other question. First of all, your office is awesome, right? And I know this because you did a amazing marketing video. Tell people about the marketing video because it's awesome. It's on her Instagram. Tell people also, what is your Instagram handle so they can follow you?
Yes, my Instagram handle for my business is Broad Horizon Speech. And then my personal Instagram is Kalanda_XO. But yeah, that was so fun doing that promotional video. I mean, it was a great opportunity. I felt like after working with a marketer and kind of revamping my website and just increasing my overall web presence, right? Because once I was interviewed by the local news, more people were coming to my website. I was getting more traffic, more calls. So I felt like I needed some kind of personable aspect to add to my business and really, showing me as a clinician and the different things that I offered. I felt like just seeing that as a visual and that psychological factor was so huge. So I was so impressed with the videographer. He did a great job in being able to piece everything together and just kind of market that new location. Because when I started, I was primarily home-based. I was going into homes and that's what I was doing. And then once I decided that I was going to work with pediatricians and kind of do some out-of-network reimbursement plans and doing that. So I wanted to have an office location and kind of set myself up to continue to grow. So I did. And like I said, just being in the group, connecting with so many people, it just has given me so many mentors through this process who have helped me and helped shape oh yeah, this is what type of space you should go and look for. And then voila, now I'm looking for the right thing. I would have never known to look at this type of space. And so it's great. It's in this great location. It's downtown. It's literally across the street from the Children's Hospital and a prime medical center. So it's in a prime location. And I mean, every day when I go there, I kind of like, I can't believe I have an office here. Like here, like when I think of where I was last year, like stressed out, trying to figure out how I was going to see all these kids and, planning teletherapy and not even having a chance to barely go to the restroom without running really quick and then get back to my computer and like literally be glued for 7 hours and not be able to move, to really having flexibility. And I mean, it was just incredible. But the video just really brought to life all of those aspects in 1 minute. And I felt like, wow, like this is it. You could see all the aspects of what I'm doing, what my business is about. And it was just great. Like it was such a great opportunity. And I'm so glad I had the chance to be able to add that to my website, because I think it brought a lot of value.
Well, 100%. And you also you just look so confident and, so poised. And, I think that's, I think I'm a parent, I also have kids. And when I'm thinking about taking my kids somewhere for services or like, a camp, I don't know, anything, it's like, you kind of want to see what the environment looks like. And you also want to see, who are who's the person or who are the people who might be interacting with your child, right? So you are showing in 1 minute this very like lovely video about, you as a professional, you're sharing the space. And I think it's very, warm and inviting, and also shows you just a smart SLP who's delivering these services. I would 1,000% sign up my kid for your speech therapy services.
Thank you.
Okay. So we talked about a little bit about your journey. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I know that because I follow you on Instagram. And so I know that you've done some guest lecturing for a local university. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that's one thing that sometimes SLPs and in particular private practitioners want to do, is to have some relationships with universities and share either their experience in private practice or, just about whatever they specialize in. So could you share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's always been like a passion of mine to kind of work at that education aspect, with mentorship. I've always felt like a strong connection to that. And given from my experiences in grad school, I had some professors that you stuck out to me, and they really made an effort to make me into the clinician I am today. And I wanted to give back to that. And I always wondered, why are there so many clinicians who don't want students? I would read these things on Facebook and not really understand. And I kind of, at that moment, put in my mind, like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be that person, who really pushes the student to be who they are, but still hold them accountable so they learn, and they learn the great value of this profession. And so I felt like I needed to find a way to be able to do that. And honestly, with me starting a private practice, this was the way that I got to that point. So interesting, fast forward, I have my local interview on the news, and one of the local graduate students happens to see that air on TV. And so, as you know, in the field of speech language pathology, the amount of minorities is very small. It's only 8%, and with only 3.6% being African American, which is what I identify as. And so this graduate student, who also identifies as African American, saw me there on the TV, and she decided to look up my business. So when she did, she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I don't know if you're taking any interns." And at this point, I'm like, whoa, this is really blowing my mind. Like, I just started a private practice, and now someone wants me to take an intern. So I kind of wanted to know more about the process. But then I thought, this is what I've always wanted to do. And I really do want to help shape future clinicians. So I said, have your clinical supervisor reach out to me and we'll chat. And she did. So the clinical supervisor reached out to me, and lo and behold, she was actually one of my mentors when I worked in the local district. So she was like, "Oh my gosh, Kalonda, I didn't know you started a private practice." And we started talking about all these things. And then I said, "You know what? Yes, absolutely, I'll do it, because this is something I've always wanted to do." And so I signed up to my first contract, right? Remember, I just got my first contract into a charter school. So not only did I take on my first contract with a charter school, but I signed a contract and an affiliation agreement with a local graduate program to supervise their students. So I was like, wow, oh my gosh, like it's really unfolding. These are all the things that I wanted to do. And man, just going into private practice is kind of what allowed these things to happen. Because had I not gone into private practice, I don't know if I'd ever have the opportunity to work with a student. Maybe, maybe not. So that was such a great opportunity. So once I got connected with that, one of the members, who is the vice president of NSHLA, which is the National Student Speech Language Hearing Association, reached out from the chapter there at the university and said, "Hey, it's February, it's Black History Month, and we're doing a segment on highlighting businesses, and we'd really like to interview you because we're talking about inclusion and diversity within our field, and we'd really love to hear your perspective." And I was like, "Oh, absolutely. I'm honored that you're even asking me, first of all." So, of course, I'll do it. And of course, it was via Zoom. And I can't tell you, like, it was just great. The students asked some of the most amazing questions to me, and it was so insightful. And I've even had, there were undergraduate students who were logged on as well as graduate students. So, and their professors who were on, and them just, I talked about my business, kind of told them how I got started. And one of my favorite questions was, "What was the hardest thing about starting your private practice?" And I was like, "You just said it. That was it. Starting. That was the hardest part. That was literally the hardest part, was me just starting." And imagine if I didn't start, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys today, to be quite honest. So it was just kind of that I decided to take that leap of faith and get out there. And then they asked me some other great questions about how did I deal with imposter syndrome? And that was a great question because it was actually from a student who was a minority. And she asked me, she said, "I've often battled with this as being, an African-American student. Like, how do you deal with that?" So I was like, man, these questions are amazing. It was great conversation to be able to talk to them and shed light on those topics, because that is really a huge goal of mine too, is to continue to grow the diversity in our field. And so having conversations like that and being able to tell her, like, yes, like I've dealt with that myself, like I've shown up to locations and people ask me, "Oh, are you the, maintenance? Are you here, you janitorial?" When I've worked in rehab, just assuming because I look like how I look. And then when I say I'm a speech language pathologist, it's kind of like, "Oh, well, where did you go to school at? And how long have you been doing this?" And so being able to have that conversation with students, like on a panel, and kind of share how that experience has been mine and how I dealt with that, is just by being confident in who I am. Like, yes, I'm a speech language pathologist. I have this experience. Now I'm a business owner. Like, I own it. I'm here to show up. And I just kind of got in the mindset of, listen, there doesn't have to be room for me at the table because I'm making my own table. And you're welcome to come over here if you want to come.
Well, just think about if you hadn't been on the news, right? And that student hadn't have seen you, right?
Exactly.
So that's why representation matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to have, yes, it was Black History Month. And so it was good that the whole thing happened like that. But like, had you not been on the news and the student ran, I mean, what's grad students watch the news these days? Like
Exactly.
none of them, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right? But, she got to see you and then, brought you into the program, right? Then you had like kind of rekindled like a previous relationship with a mentor. And then think of all of the students who heard you on the panel, heard your answers to, some pretty deep questions, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now you're on a podcast where thousands of people are going to hear this interview. And, it makes a difference. And I really love what you said about making your own table.
Yes. And that was huge. And I kind of always walked in that, when I was analyzing and trying to figure out if private practice was for me, always kind of figuring out like, have I been doing this long enough? Do I feel like I have enough experience? Like I don't have a million certifications in all these different areas, but I just kind of felt like, listen, there had been so many people who had talked to me and said, I'd love for you to see my child, or I'd love for you to work with so and so. And it was kind of like those things that I just passed off because I was doubting myself and I didn't feel like I had the competence to do it. Not that I didn't have the training, because I very well had the training, but it was just the self-confidence. And all of these opportunities have really like increased that for me, and really created me to be in the mindset of, you are your worst critic, right? Like I'm the one who's the most tough on myself more than anyone. So I just decided like I'm going to start showing up, period. Like I'm not going to not do this anymore and doubt myself. And that's what I did. And so the fact that people were able to see that with my interviews on the news and, see my presence online when they're researching to find my business and read more about me. So, I mean, it's been tremendous. I can't even begin to tell you like how many things that I've done. And recently I was interviewed by one of my previous professors in an article talking about, the challenges and triumphs of minority business leaders in the field. And so they were interviewing alumni students. And that was, again, an opportunity that probably would have not come about had I not started a private practice. So being able to do that, and, that will be out in a few months and it'll be published in my alma mater's magazine. So the fact that me, Kalonda, the SLP who is debating whether or not what she's going to do, and to be here now to have these opportunities, like it just blows my mind every day when I think about it. So, and to be here, sitting here with you, like, I was the one listening to all of your podcasts, like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So when you asked me, I was like, what? Absolutely.
Well, and I mean, listeners, isn't this incredible also that she's not only, done this, because this is a big lift, right? But to have done it within a year during arguably one of the worst years like ever, right? You said you said a word twice that I just want to highlight again for the listeners, which is the word is decided, right? So back when you were talking to the students and someone said, what's the hardest part? And you said deciding to start, right? And then later you talked about, how to get over that imposter syndrome, especially as a minority, is to say, you know what, I've decided not to listen to that, right? From other people, and also not to listen to, whatever inner critic you have in there, right? So growth comes from decisions and from deciding. So good for you for deciding to start and then deciding not to listen to either external critics or even your own internal critic, because you would not be here where you are today if you were listening to garbage voices.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's the key word. And that's every day I make the decision to show up and do what I need to do to be where I want to be, essentially. So that's, I made a decision every time, you know. So when you reached out to me and you told me about the contracting class, I said, I'm making a decision and I'm taking this course.
And that's with Ebony Green, folks. Look up Ebony Green.
Yes.
It's SLP Contracts Queen on Instagram.
Yes. And Ebony is phenomenal. And she's just shared so much inspiration as far as, you know, gaining contracts, and I just can't explain how much this whole journey has helped, you know, and with meeting you, and then being introduced to Ebony, and then Ebony has introduced me to some of her mentors. So it's just a continuum of so many people that I've met, and I mean, these people I haven't even met in person, but in talking to them on the phone and chatting, you know, it's like we could hang out tomorrow and have a cup of coffee and it would be like we haven't skipped a beat. Like, that's how genuine I feel about these relationships and the people who've helped me to this point. So it's just tremendous. I mean, and the amount of information that I've learned from there, and kind of really getting me on to learning more about contracts. And I can't tell you, like, I feel so much more confident now with looking at that information where I didn't before. So it's definitely the greatest decision to, again, make the decision to start, and then make the decision to invest in what you want to do. And sometimes I know those monetary things can be hard, but you have to think about, if it's an investment, it is something that's going to benefit you in the long run. And so there hasn't been an investment that I've made thus far that has served me wrong. Like, every investment I've made has made my practice grow into what it is now. So definitely, I don't regret anything that I've done investment wise.
I love it. You are such an inspiration. I want to make sure that people know where to find you on the web and also on social media. So can you share your links so people can look you up?
Yes. So you can find my personal Instagram. It's at Calonda, CALONDA_XO. And then you can find my business Instagram is Broad Horizons Beach. And you can find me there on Instagram as well. And so I share a lot of information on both platforms. And really just being able to share both sides has been tremendous. You can find Broad Horizons on Facebook. We have a Facebook page there and are very active. And so, yeah, come find me. I'd love to meet everyone.
Well, and also, you know, as someone who listens, or at least I would think not just one person, but people who are listening to this are going to say, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it. Right. And I think that is my number one goal for the podcast, is for listeners to hear the people being interviewed and realize that they are just regular SLPs who decided to take control of their professional and their personal and their financial lives and make a decision and go for it.
Yes, so, I agree.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Calonda. I hope that people look you up, send Calonda a DM and say, hey, this was my biggest takeaway. Thank her, for her time and everything else, sharing her expertise, her wisdom and everything else. But, you are truly an inspiration. Good for you for getting started during a pandemic and growing. And I cannot wait to see what happens to you. If you had this much growth in this year, or last year rather, imagine what will happen this next year.
I'm hopeful. I know that it's going to happen. So I'm just excited and waiting. And again, thank you for this opportunity to have me here. And I really do hope that my words serve as inspiration to someone, because like I said, in the past, I've listened to your podcast and been so inspired by so many SLPs doing amazing things. And it's just truly incredible about what you're doing and how we are just changing the game of our profession. It's like we're taking back control to a sense, because we are now, being in control of your own schedule, your finances, your time off, and now being a mom, being able to decide, well, I'm going to go, to my son's Christmas party today, and I don't have to ask anyone if I can go. I can go, and, I can arrange my schedule to be there and just do things that I never thought that I would be doing. And like I said, coining the future profession. That is what I'm here for, and that is what I look forward to doing throughout this process.
We'll keep doing it.
Yes.
So how impressive is Kalonda? I hope that hearing her story really helped you see what is possible for a regular, stuck SLP who decided that her clients deserved more and she wanted more for her life and also for her family. She had a dream and she went for it. And like I said in the introduction, if she was able to accomplish all of this in 2020, imagine what she'll be able to do in 2021. And I can't wait to have her back for a Where Are They Now episode. There are so many lessons here, and I would love it if you took a moment to DM Kalonda. She is at Kalonda_XO, and also me at Independent Clinician, and share your biggest takeaway. But the one that I want to leave you with is what she talked about deciding to be ready, that the decision is the hard part. But without making that decision, without committing to becoming a successful private practitioner, you won't reap the benefits of that freedom, flexibility, fulfillment, and financial abundance that you're after. So if you're stuck, and if you've been stuck, make a decision. Decide that you were made for more and that your clients deserve more. And then go out there and get it. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.
I decided to invest in the Start Your Private Practice program because I honestly had no idea where to start.
And I just didn't really have the confidence or the know-how to be able to do that.
So it was really nice to have a system that was all set up for me. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch. It was all there for me.
And I was able to land a client within about the first week and a half of me going public with my private practice.
So now I have 12 clients. It is such an invigorating and amazing experience.
If you want help to start your speech therapy private practice, then head on over to startyourprivatepractice.com/waitlist so that you will be notified as soon as we reopen the doors to the Start Your Private Practice system. Again, that's startyourprivatepractice.com/